Hi. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Time is a gift and it's precious, so really, truly grateful that you all are here with us.
Hi, Amira.
Hi.
I feel like we haven't talked since yesterday.
I know.
But
Yesterday morning, at 10:30 exactly.
let me pull up my questions. Thank you, Amira, for trusting me with it. I know a book, and after even reading through this and reading through so many of your personal stories that you were putting, it's like this is your heart, your soul, and so much of you in this book. So for just to be able to share the stage with you and to be able to talk to this wonderful group of people about this, I know that can be a deeply personal thing there. So thank you for trusting me there. As I shared with Amira, this was when we talked about this maybe a month or a few weeks ago. When she asked me to do this, I was like, man, I'm running around. I looked at the title of the book, and I was like, I know I need to be nicer as an executive. I think I'm individually can be a very nice person, but I think as I've gone on this journey as a managing partner of a growing digital firm, I'm in my mid 40s, but having to work with folks and so forth, having to work with folks from the Gen Z, millennials to Gen X and so forth. You're recognizing the need for niceness. If you're of an age where you kind of had to put your head down, accept what was coming, just do your work. Don't need to be too flashy, especially coming up in politics. A lot of the nice was stripped out of that. So when I first saw the title, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, this is also the first book I've ever read, as I mentioned, on my phone. I'm not an audiobook guy. I like a physical copy. And that actually, to the point, actually made it even a better read because I could kind of scroll back, take notes right into my own notes app, learning in real time. So if you haven't read the book yet, I definitely suggest you either have your iPad, tablet, phone, notebook ready to go because there are so many different gems that are going to come out of this. But the way we're going to set this up, we have a few questions. Amira's going to read an excerpt of the book throughout, and then turn it over to the audience as well for some questions. That sound good for you?
That does. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Let's start at the beginning, like the genesis of the book. I think your voice in this book is clear, it's urgent, and as I mentioned earlier, very deeply personal. I would say what moment, pattern, like what period of time when you decided to say like, hey, I need to take this out of my head and put this on paper, that convinced you to really want to write the book, The Price of Nice. The Price of Nice, I'm sorry.
Yeah. There are a lot of different moments, and as you get into the book and dig in, you'll definitely learn a lot more about me. But in particular, it was in 2022, my husband and I sat our then 9-year-old, now 12-and-a-half-year-old, the half's very important apparently when you get to that age, almost teen. And we were sitting down and we wanted her to spend time watching the Senate Judiciary Hearing Committees for Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Thought, oh my God, I want her to witness history and to know possibility. And this is a truly historic and big moment. And as we sat down over those days, if you watched it, you know that what she saw was a lot of misogyny. A lot of people dressing a black woman down, questioning her accolades and her credibility. And on the second day of the hearings, Audrey looks to me and she whispers and she goes, why is he interrupting her so much? And why isn't anybody doing anything about it? And then she asked me permission to use a word that she's not supposed to. And I was intrigued. So I said yes. And she said, isn't he kind of being a jerk? And I said yes. And so over those couple of days, we had a lesson that night that I learned many moons ago from one of my favorite humans and authors, Bell Hooks, who's no longer with us. And she said something along the lines of, it's not that people don't see your power, it's actually that they do, and they don't want it to exist. And so we talked to Audrey about that lesson. We had to wait 215 years, or 155, and then 250 different judges. 5 of them were women, but none of them black. 15 of them were black men. And so we were sitting there, and in that moment, the person that spoke up and came to her side was Senator Cory Booker, right? He sort of from his chair witnessed what was happening and disrupted it and said something and, just very, calmly and in a brotherly way, let her know, I see you. I see what's happening and it is not okay. And Audrey also took that lesson. And then CBS called, because I wrote an article about it for San Francisco Chronicle. And then CBS was like, hey, mom and daughter, this is a great story. We want to talk to you. And so we're sitting there, and the reporter, Andrea, asks little 9-year-old Audrey, when Senator Ted Cruz was peppering Justice Jackson with questions, how did that make you feel? And what did that make you think about Senator Ted Cruz? And my little 9-year-old looked that reporter deadpan in the face and said, Ted Cruz is a bastard.
Did that make it in the article?
No, they cut that. I was like, you didn't ask permission this time. That's a house rule. You can cuss, but you're going to ask. And so for me, in many ways, this book was an answer to some of my then 9-year-old's questions. I wrote a book to answer some of her questions and to push back against so much of what I knew would be handed to her of sit pretty, play nice. That's what they expected of Ketanji in that moment, right? Sit pretty, play nice, let it go. Don't rock the boat. Now is not the time to address this. We can challenge it later. Just be glad you got a seat at the table. Just be glad you're in the room. Sit pretty, play nice. And I don't want that for Audrey. I want something else. I want something more for me, for you, for her, for all of us. And so I wrote a book.
You did a good job at it.
Thank you.
By show of hands, before I ask that question, when we talked about, I'm like, well, who's going to be in the room as we talk through the questions and because there's so many different ways you can go through this discussion. She's like, a lot of executives, a lot of women who may be executives running their own companies or in various roles in organizations, profit, not-for-profit. And I thought that was also one of the biggest learning lessons and things you can take away from this book, is for folks who lead others or who impact others, even if you're an organization or company of one, but you do have front-facing roles and responsibilities, whether in community and so forth, and understanding that balance. There's so many different quotes in the book here, but something you start off very early on, I believe it's in the preface or the first chapter. Niceness is a velvet glove over an iron fist, stifling dissent and prioritizing comfort over progress. It conditions us to accept the status quo, protecting those in power at the expense of equity and opportunity. What did you mean when you said that?
I'm a very visual learner, and so imagery and metaphor is always helpful for me. And as I was like, there is this cherry plum tree in our front yard, and that's where I do a lot of my writing, because I like to take my shoes off and ground in the grass. And I'm sitting under the cherry plum tree, and I was just like, what does niceness look like? Like, what am I trying to say? Like, if I had to paint a picture for someone that niceness is a problem and we need something else, something different, like, what is it? The why? And I just, like, being punched in the gut was like a picture that kept coming to mind of being constantly told to sit pretty and play nice. And I thought, yeah, iron fist, velvet glove. It looks pretty on the outside, but there's something hidden on the inside that's gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt bad.
Yes. I love getting grounded. Highly recommend it to everyone. One of the things that I took out of the book, like I said, as a leader, as a person who is trying to lead, inspire, as many of you all here are leading, inspiring others, and understanding how to apply niceness, and I think how so many of the lessons that can be learned from this book that you can take away and like actually institute. Like what do we say? Like, how do we consolidate some of these core concepts? So I'm like, hey, I might not have as much time, but I want to read this. What should I put into practice? In that, you define nice, nerve, and neutrality as three very different forces in the workplace culture. Can you break down and talk about what each one of those means? Like you said, this was a central concept throughout in a part of the book, and where the real dangers and costs show up.
Yeah. To me, niceness is, at least the way I'm describing it in the book, is about oftentimes protecting other people's comfort, right? And maintaining the what is. It's sort of in the workplace, but it's always been done this way. Or the idea of darling systems or sacred cows, maybe one way you've heard it described. We can't touch these things. It's how they are. It's what they are. Leave it alone. To me, that is akin to what I mean when I talk about this niceness that's expected of us. Nerve, which is the antithesis of nice, not mean. I didn't write a whole book telling people to be mean. It was nerve. And to me, nerve is about challenging. It's about disrupting and pushing for something that may not exist yet, but needs to. And neutrality is something being at your doorstep and pretending it doesn't exist, looking the other way. And in 2016, there was a writer, and I wrote it down. Naomi Schulman is her name, and she had written an article that really stuck with me when it came to this idea of neutrality. There's a chapter in the book where I talk about how neutrality doesn't exist. Like that's not a thing. I don't believe in it. I don't like it. You must always choose a side. You must plant a flag. Neutrality only serves the oppressor, those who are already in power. And so this quote from this article, I want to read it to you because it was good, and it's still good, and you should read the whole article if you can. But Naomi Schulman, she had said, nice can seem harmless. Oh, wait, no, here it starts. Sorry, here we go. Nice people made the best Nazis. Or so I've been told. My mother was born in Munich in 1934 and spent her childhood in Nazi Germany, surrounded by nice people who refused to make waves. When things got ugly, the people my mother lived alongside chose not to focus on politics, instead busying themselves with nicer, happier things. They were lovely, kind, nice people who turned their heads as their neighbors were dragged away. So nerve to me says, well, nice first. Nice says, don't upset anyone or anything. Neutrality says, don't get involved. Nerve says, if there is harm happening in front of me, I will do something about it, no matter the cost. And that's a huge part of what I want people to take away from this book is that, sitting pretty and playing nice, it's just not of use to me. I want nerve, more audacity to push, to challenge, to say the quiet parts out loud that might get you in trouble, that will definitely rock the boat, that might get you walked to the door. I've had that experience. So
we're in a time, look, yeah.
Sure are. Literally.
Just look outside, look on your phone.
Yep.
Ironically, being here in D.C. With the juxtaposition of the tree lighting ceremony and so forth, where we could use a lot more nerve. And I think we are understanding as people, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, but understanding that a lot more nerve is there. And there is, I think it's readily apparent that the nice, that neutrality, play nice, is allowing so many things to go unchecked. If you're like anything like me or others, you turn on the TV or look on social and you're like, they just announced what is happening, parallel in the words you're there, we literally are having neighbors dragged away and thrown away, and you can get, if you bring it up in the wrong place, that and let's be nice, that's I don't want to upset, I don't want to revisit slavery. I don't want to revisit what's happening with
that
immigration.
Avoidance.
I don't want that avoidance. And I think leading into my next question there, and I told you I'm a huge, for everyone, I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. So there's a little couple paragraphs in there where she brings up a very central tenet that Bruce Lee has said in terms of be like water. So I was like, oh, how do I build a question around that? But I'm obsessed. I know me. I'm obsessed with progress. If others are, whether it's progress at your organization, again, reading a book like this, like I said, there's so many practices as a leader, or also as a follower that you can pull from this. And I think we were all, wherever you sit in your organizational chart, you're probably looking for progress. And you point out that there are 4 characteristics of nice that hinder progress.
I do.
Lack of awareness, lack of accountability, lack of agency, and lack of adaptability. Could you just pull on that thread a little bit, and then I know you'll probably want to jump right into.
Yeah, it's on page 77 if you're following along, or if you want to bookmark that for later. But those 4 characteristics, and it's similar to the entire framework of the book, of the 4 parts that can move us towards progress, which is think, feel, do, revisit, which is a very typical framework that we use in the world of communications, and it's borrowed from social psychology, and so there's a lot of cognitive behavioral elements in that framework. And one of the reasons these 4 characteristics I laid out in the book is because there are 4 knowings that are helpful to have as a leader. So the first knowing would be an assessment set. meaning data that you collect around you or just observing like where you are. The second would be mindset, right? Your mindset, how you think about things and take it in, and that emotional component of how you are maybe avoiding discomfort or processing things. There's skill set, right? That's what you do. The do part of the book that I talk about. You have to have the skills to enact the tools that are handed to you and to do it well. And then there is the actual tool set, meaning other resources, whether that's a mentor, a coach, a book that helps you implement those skills. And that's largely how some of the book is laid out. And it plays into and follows these 4 characteristics as well. That lack of awareness is, what have you done to assess where you are in your journey? Do you have the language? Like, I start the book out with definitions. What does nice mean? What does nerve mean? Root ourselves in definitions so that we know what I'm talking about. Because I think there's a different version of nice that you might paint in your head depending on who you are, depending on context. You might not know what I mean when I say nice is a problem. Because most people are like, why? What's wrong with nice? And then the accountability piece, there is an element of a lot of internal work that has to be done for you to be a person that has an open enough mind and a growth mindset to receive new information and to understand that maybe you don't know everything. Maybe you're not right about everything, and maybe you can think about moving through the world differently. So that's some of what you're going to find in here. And with that Think, Feel, Do, Revisit framework is those 4 knowings, the assessment set, the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set that I hope you will use. And I also say in the book that this is not meant to be a blueprint. I think a lot of people want a map. Mm-hmm. X marks the spot. There's a legend with a key and milestone markers along the way of, okay, Amira, how do I get from nice to nerve? Like, how do I do it? What's the blueprint? I'm not giving you a blueprint. I'm not giving you a map. This is, at best, a compass, and that is on purpose. It is very intentional, and it is done with care. I'm very cognizant not to give people a blueprint because I am not you. You are not me. The X I'm marching towards is not the one that you are marching towards. And there is too much nuance, there's too much context to how you practice nerve and where you practice nerve. I'm a Black woman. I can't practice nerve the same way a white man or white woman can. My map would look very different. A compass is a tool. A compass is a tool you need a skill set and the right mindset for. And no matter where you go, if you happen to get off track or need to pivot, if you know how to use the compass, you can pivot within context and the nuance that you are living and experiencing. And I hope that that's what people think of and know when they take this book, that it is not a blueprint. It is not a 12-step program. It is a compass for you to use in the context of you and how you show up, your identities, and your life.
Oh, I thought you were going to read.
Oh, yes, I am going to read. There was
can you do me a huge favor?
Yeah, I can.
Put just a little button right on your... This.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no, let's go.
It's going? Okay.
Okay. I want to make sure we capture it. So.
Yeah. So before we get into the next question, I want to read a part of the preface because it's a huge part. One, most people skip it.
Oh,
you shouldn't do that.
No,
you shouldn't do that.
The preface lays the book out.
Right. You do. I like this. Is a reading group. I can tell.
It sets a tone. As she said, you get the tone set.
You do. All right. This is a group of readers. Thank you for reading books. Yes. People don't do that anymore.
No,
and a lot of people skip the preface. So the preface is a lot of, well, why you, Amira? Why are you the one to write this book? And this is one of the earliest memories, as I sat down to outline and write this book, one of the earliest memories that I could think to of nice being couched to me in the way that I understand it and the way that it taught me to shrink myself and to be palatable instead of powerful. So here we go.
What were you reading?
The preface.
Oh, straight up.
There, yes, right at the top. So I'm an 80s baby, but the 90s raised me. I grew up with parents who maintained discipline through sharp looks, heavy sighs, a raised eyebrow that could stop you mid-sentence, and the occasional swift rebuke to the backside. Nice wasn't a suggestion, it was a non-negotiable demand. And for much of my life, I lived up to it. I was known to many as precious, sweet Amira. In fact, my husband's late mother, Pearl, used to enthusiastically address me by that title as if it were my full government name. And I leaned into that persona, wearing it like a badge of honor. But that existence came with a price. The problem was nice never quite fit me. It was an unrelenting tug of war between the suffocating expectations of the daughter I was supposed to be and the daughter I truly was. The one who asked questions, wanting to be heard, not just seen. For a long time, it was a trap I couldn't figure out how to free myself from. And growing up, doing things for the gram didn't exist yet. And the one surefire way to showcase that you just lived your best life on a summer adventure somewhere was vacation hair. If you know, you know. It screamed, I went somewhere fabulous and I need you to know it. My sisters and I had two best friends, blonde-haired, hazel-eyed twins who were fixtures at our house and we at theirs. The twins would return from vacation every summer, grinning ear to ear with braided cornrows, beads clacking together, and painfully sunburned scalps. But soon their cornrows were more like frizzy haystacks, and they'd be sitting cross-legged on my mom's bedroom floor, begging her to rebraid them. Can you braid it like theirs? They'd ask, pointing at me and my sisters. My mom would sigh, shake her head slightly, and get to work. As she'd done 1,000 times before, she'd pull out her comb, part the twins' fine blonde hair into sections, and start braiding while they squirmed, winced, and squealed. Ouch, that's too tight. Why does it hurt so much? Does it hurt like this when you get yours done too? Is my hair falling out? I think my hair is falling out. Standing in the doorway, brow furrowed, I watched these girls act like they were being tortured. You know those scenes in cartoons where the character is trying to make a decision with an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other, both giving advice? I spent most of my life trying to choke out that little demon voice. But that day, I was done with the drama. It was too much, and the dark side took over. It felt like an out-of-body experience, as if channeling the wisdom from an ancestral black auntie. I matter-of-factly blurted out, "It's because your hair isn't made for braids." The room fell silent. Amidst a collective gasp, my mom froze, hands mid-braid, with an unmistakable look that conveyed all it needed to. I could almost hear her gritted teeth through her "Amira, I know you didn't just say that" stare. My youngest sister stifled a giggle, while the rest looked on with pity, imagining the whooping I'd get later. One of the twins whipped her head around so fast, beads went flying everywhere, her eyes wide, her mouth open, her expression a mixture of shock, hurt, and confusion. But I wasn't done. I crossed my arms, shrugged, and with all the self-righteous confidence I could muster, said, "Well, it's not for you. That's why your head hurts so much." "Amira," my mom snapped back, "that's not nice." The twins just stared at me. I stomped off to the next room to wait my fate. My mom sighed, muttered something under her breath, and finished fixing their braids. Even from the other room, I was sure I heard the twins whispering dramatically about how mean I was. After they went home, my mom pulled me aside and delivered the scolding I knew was coming. "Amira," she said, serious mom tone fully activated, "you can't just say things like that, even if it's true." And there it was, the price of nice, a lesson ingrained in many of us as kids. Being nice is more important than being real. No matter how right you are, if it makes someone uncomfortable, you are the problem. Looking back, I now realize I could have handled the situation better or differently. I loved the twins like they were my flesh and blood, and even 30 years plus later, we're still sisters in every way that matters. If only little Amira had the proper communication tools at her disposal. For example, I didn't know about concepts like the matching principle, which might have helped me assess the kind of conversation I was in and how to respond accordingly. And the matching principle quickly is one of three conversation types: practical conversations focused on solving problems or making plans, emotional conversations about sharing feelings and seeking empathy, and social conversations centered on connection and identity. And I, that day, was locked into practical mode. I usually am. I am a September Virgo. And I thought, do you want to feel better? Your head hurts because braids aren't for you. Stop getting braids. Duh. But the twins were experiencing an emotional conversation. They wanted empathy. And I couldn't fathom how "poor thing, I'm sorry" was any type of solution. I still think I was right, even if I could or should have responded differently. But the lesson of that moment wasn't about my attitude in the face of unwitting cultural appropriation. It was about my conditioning to align with the world's expectations. It was precedent setting, the first knot in a lifetime of lessons I'd have to learn to unbraid. Their discomfort wasn't my fault, but knowing that truth isn't enough. Thank you.
I think a few things that initial story tell us how niceness is taught, usually early in childhood.
Yeah.
I think leading into another question, there was so many different dynamics. The age dynamic being taught. There's a racial dynamic there. And as you saw in that excerpt, and you'll get in the preface and throughout, you're really good, as you mentioned earlier, really good with definitions, kind of defining, giving us the words to understand what we're thinking, seeing, not just in the book, but also I think in so many other places. But even at an early age, I think there was another lesson that was kind of being taught there. Well, I don't know if it was being taught, but it was being displayed. Is that this is one of many different stories throughout the book where truth-telling can feel risky. I think this is the child version of this. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to get a spanking. I'm not trying to get yelled at. I'm not trying to get punished. I don't want to lose my friends.
Right.
But as you mentioned, like by show of hands, how many people just this week have had the angel demon of like, I need to say this.
What do I do?
But I want to say this. But I think uniquely in this period where we've seen headlines that 300,000+ Black women have lost jobs, when we have seen something that no one can still explain this to me, like how diversity, equity, or inclusion, those words, I understand what it is as a marketer. Like, hey, I'm gonna turn this into a politicized term, but how any of those things are wrong, but those things have been stripped away. Just the general unsafe world environment, to the point where you legitimately, like we have seen things, people stepping up and showing that nerve that you mentioned, leading them to jail, leading them to cancellation, leading them to unemployability, leading to so many different things. And it really feels like women of color are even more doubly impacted there. But you have shown nerve throughout your career. I think you talk about it in the book a little bit, but I don't know, maybe people can learn a little bit from pulling out of your story, maybe both whether it's in the book or personally, where some nerve that you showed, as opposed to just just focusing on being nice, but that nerve either changed your trajectory or you saw the positive outlook. I think as an adult, as a leader in your professional, because you did that with that initial story there as a child, but how's that applied now?
Yeah, I still do it. And I tell people you don't have to be me. And you might not want to be, because there is a cost. I would like more people to be me, but I understand everyone's got a different situation. I push the envelope, and I have been walked to the door for it. I'm not entirely convinced that the recent walking to the door wasn't partially influenced by the fact that I can't shut up. And I will write the thing, and I'll write it in MSNBC, and I will tell the truth always. And that's a part of me. That's who I am. That's my value set. And it does come at a cost. It could cost you your job. It could cost you friendships. It could cost you relationships. And that's the calculus you have to make. I remember, at the last job when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I wrote an article about how there were quite a few people at our firm, I didn't name names though, who were telling us, that we needed to play nice and that we needed to understand the other side and the blah, 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 blah. Even though we know Black women are disproportionately impacted. I wrote an article from MSNBC, got me in a lot of hot water. I never used the company name, but people can Google and find out where I work. But it was important to me, right? That was historic, what happened, and devastating. And I wasn't gonna not say something about it. But you asked for a positive example. So a positive example would be, I think so much what I want people to take away and hear, and why I talk a lot about mindset shifts, and that's what I get to do day to day. Like, that's my job. I do a lot of behavioral communications, which is really about helping leaders understand their mindset such that they move through the world in a certain way and take very specific kinds of actions. It's about expansive thinking. And so I'm very values aligned. And I had the opportunity, it was with Ogilvy, when I was making a switch in sectors. And at the time, Ogilvy was offering me something really good. Like, there were several mentors who were like, that number and that job, you better not say, like, you don't say no to that. Like, you would be wild if you said no to that. And I'm a very spiritual person, and there were just a lot of reasons that I just felt a vibe of it's a no. And maybe not a full no, maybe it's the next option, maybe it's a not right now. And I toiled with it for weeks. And I did eventually say no to a dream job. Like, I had been vying for this, we had been courting each other for years. And it was more money than they should have given me, a bigger title than I expected them to give me, and autonomy to do something on one of our biggest clients at the time. So it was a very big job that you don't say no to, but I did. And then the West Coast president, who some of you know, found out that I said no, and he's like, what do you mean she said no? Who is she? I need to meet the woman who said no to us, because you don't say no to this kind of job. And he was like, no, like, genuinely, I just want to know her. She said no. And that was my version at that time, and in that instance of practicing nerve, is saying no to the thing that everyone says, you can't say no to this, you should want this, you should say yes to this is what you vied for and worked for and toiled for. But it just didn't sit right in my spirit at the time. And so we did go to lunch, that West Coast president and we sat there for like almost 3 hours, and we just talked. And he was a wonderful human being. And I did eventually go work for him 2 years later. So it worked out in the end. But that nerve, I think, being true to my core and my values, showed him who I was, and was a reason why my no wasn't offensive to them. My no was intrigue. And he said, I got to know this woman. Let me sit down and get to know her. And I went to work for him 2 years later anyhow. And we had a great run. And there are many people from that job in this room, beautiful humans who I'm so glad are with me still, including Ashley, especially Ashley. So that's an example of that nerve, of the mindset that you need, the skill set that you need to trust yourself and to trust what is innate within you, and to believe that what is for you will not miss you.
That's a whole word. I've got a ton of questions and notes, but I'd love to open it up to those, whether you've read the book or not. Just what you've either pulled from here. Because I know everybody here is leaving with at least one, if not multiple copies. But did anybody here have any questions other than Ashley first? No, I'm just kidding. The ringer's supposed to ask the question like the second one. No, I'm just kidding. Ashley, no, what's the question?
Me?
Love her.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Okay.
I want to, like, I'm here for all of this. You know I'm here for it, right? I think where I'm struggling is we live in corporate America. And how do you find the courage? Because I'm like the politics of corporate America demands
Yeah.
that I play nice for a host of reasons.
Right?
Because it's your place.
It's true.
But we don't have that kind of time.
No, we don't.
So how do you find the courage? Like, how do you find the courage to find nerve? Because yes, nerve is great, but I can't even get to nerve necessarily all the time because I don't have the courage to get there.
Yeah. So many thoughts. First thought, I practice nerve on a dial. Sometimes it's a 2, sometimes it's a 20. Depends on how much you piss me off. It's a
Let
dial.
me write that down.
Context, nuance, the room, the person, the levels of their identity, it depends, right? It's a dial. The second thought that came to my mind was, I don't know that it always starts as courage. It might end up there, but you do it scared. And I'm also just a little bit insane. I'm a September Virgo, and I just be doing shit and saying shit. So there's also that. You gotta be a little bit wild about it. That is just true. That's a little bit. It might come off as courage in the end, but it doesn't always start there. You do it scared. You just have audacity. You wake up with a little bit more audacity. You also do have to put the tool sets that you need in place, right? One of the knowings, the tool set. I hate that it's true, but you know this because you know some of them. Sometimes you have to have a cabinet of white guys who get it. I have a cabinet of white guys who get it, one being that West Coast president. Whether that's a sponsorship of some sort in the room or in a room I'm not in, an allied voice to back up what I'm saying. Sometimes that's the tool, right? Sometimes. Other times it's remembering that this work of practicing nerve it's like a relay. Like I had a woman I worked with once who was really good at doing nerve too, like always pushing up against things. Hi, good to see you. And one day I caught her in the hallway and she was just tired. Like maybe I just should stop caring because she just kept getting that pushback. And I just told her, I said, you did your part today. And this is a relay. Let me do my part. Let me take it, and then someone else will get it the next day. And I think some people view resting, i.e. putting the nerve aside for a second and maybe playing a little bit nice, as failure, and it's not. And I don't want anyone to take anything in this book as an indictment of the moments you have to choose nice. I still have to choose nice, especially as a Black woman. And it's more about the calculation and remembering it is a relay. That rest is a part of this, and you have to rest so that you can get back in the relay and do your part. And those are the thoughts that I have about that.
I think.
The rest of this, Amira.
Yeah.
You and I, the way that we know one
Yes.
another is by writing for American Pizza.
They sure do.
And so the content that we write is very on point. I don't really care. I say what I have to say.
That's right.
But it's increasingly critical because this country keeps giving me shit to do.
That's right.
So, and I'm very comfortable operating in that space. But as consequences increase, and even that piece, because I'm insulated, my mom is German, I have dual citizenship, I got an escape plan. My kids got an appointment to get their passports to escape plan. So I have privilege in that regard. If I need to escape, I have family ready to receive me in Europe. However, the rest piece I struggle with because I feel like the rest to me right now feels more costly than the consequence to my nerve. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And I often feel like in that space in particular, I lack the people to pass the baton to.
Yeah.
Because other people are so, rightfully so, increasingly concerned. And, I work for healthcare for the homeless. I work for government, but I work for local government. I work for people who get it, right? Like we're all equally pissed off about the administration. I'm not in corporate America where I have to play nice at work. I am often the disruptor in meetings and reminding people, y'all say y'all are trauma informed, so what are we talking about? That's how I carry myself all day professionally because that's the privilege that I have at work. There's not everybody who has that, so I often find myself feeling like I need to consistently be the person to carry that baton because of that privilege. And a lack of others to pass it to, especially in that space, because I feel like I have kind of this feeling of safety, but it's exhausting.
It is.
And it's also, to your point of the example that you gave of your colleague, like the return on investment is lacking. You know what I mean? So what do you do in situations like that to encourage yourself to keep pushing when there is not necessarily another person to pass the baton to and the work is too critical to put down?
I don't know if I have a satisfactory answer, but the way I live my life, for me, it's about the purpose piece, right? I choose to show up in this world knowing that the brick that I get to lay today may not benefit me. And it may not even benefit my daughter's generation the way things are going now. But I do think of the world as we are each bricklayers. I talk about my belief about leadership is I've met a lot of leaders who want a kingdom to rule and subjects to oversee, and I don't want that. I've never wanted that. I want a foundation to build from, and my job is to lay a brick, maybe 3 bricks, right? And then you get to lay a brick, and you get to lay a brick, and we're all part of building this foundation and this component, and we all have equal weight and value in that system, though our roles may be different. And I think about the first thing that came to my mind were just some of the people who did it and often did it at a high cost or alone. And that's why I always start out telling people you don't have to be me, right? James Baldwin did the work from Paris, and the work was writing. Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, their cost was clearly terminal and much bigger. And I think that that's a choice you have to make about how far you're willing to go for your value set and what your role is. Is it writing? Is it simply caring for and raising good humans that are your children in this world? Is it looking at your immediate world, right? I may not be able to change the entirety of the world, but I can impact my world. I can sit on my child's school board. I can make sure my neighbor down the street has a bag of groceries when they're letting the kids starve and food stamps aren't being paid out. right? I can do the part that I can do. I don't have to be Malcolm. You don't have to be Malcolm. But if you choose that, I think that's great. So do your part. And I think that is itself a resting practice, is to do what you can do. To do what you can control is to not boil the whole ocean. Focus on your immediate world, because I think if more of us focused on the immediacy of our world and the people and the humans we care for, it does have ripple effects. And I do tell people, and I say one thing in the book about how there is no small act. And even when I talk about micro actions, I use that term very specifically. It's because they're not small. They matter, and they have ripple effects. Right? Going next door and checking on your elderly neighbor is a form of practicing nerve. It is care, and it is part of the work. You don't have to go run to be a congressperson to be a part of the work and to practice nerve. Lead from your chair. Do what you can do from your particular seat. And I'd like to read, because you asked that question, it made me think of one thing. It's pretty short, but let me read this to you. Many of you here know me, some of you don't. I grew up on a tiny island. My parents were ministers. And so they moved us from San Diego to the tiny island of Guam in the middle of nowhere. And I wish I had known how popular sugarcane would become, because I would be rich. So I'm going to read you this excerpt. I've referenced my childhood a few times, but I haven't really provided much background. When I was between the ages of 4 and 15, my family lived on Guam, where America's Day begins, and where my mom was originally born. When we first moved to the island, we lived well outside the city limits, surrounded by jungle walls, sharing a compound of houses with aunts, uncles, and cousins. We were poor, dirt poor. Mom and Dad worked long hours, and without screens to occupy us, our afternoons after school were our own. The days during summer vacations provided a particularly blank canvas, and we spent our time on the beach or exploring the nearby jungle. One day, while wandering through the trees, my cousins and I stumbled upon a large patch of sugarcane. As kids, this new discovery could only mean one thing: a fort. Armed with nothing but an old 2x4, some rope, and our boundless imagination, we got to work. It wasn't easy, but we were determined. Eventually, we created a clearing just large enough for us to sit together. There, in our circle, we shared snacks, told stories, occasionally fought, and passed the time in ways that felt sacred. Why am I sharing this story with you? Looking back, that sugarcane circle wasn't just a place to play. It was a lesson in seeing something that wasn't yet possible and creating space where none existed before. As importantly, the sugarcane circle reminds us that challenging entrenched systems is hard. It takes labor, collective effort, and courage to insist that something new can exist where only the old once thrived. Blisters formed on our hands, tempers flared, and sometimes we wanted to give up. Even when it was complete, we were continually forced to rebuild when storms inevitably tore through. Resistance, like that sugarcane fort, demands perseverance and resolve. There's one more sugarcane metaphor I'd like to leave you with. As I mentioned, the space was small, with barely enough room for my siblings and cousins, but one morning, some boys from down the road happened across our little fort while they were en route to their own adventures. They asked if they could play too. We could have hung a no trespassing sign, but instead, we invited them in and did the necessary work to widen the circle. My brother's friend once showed up with pizza rolls, so it's not like we were going to keep him out. And so it went. As others came to join our merry band, we kept widening the circle to welcome new perspectives and people. All it required was our willingness. This is what the system fears most. Not loud, rebellious declarations, but the quiet determination of those who refuse to accept its terms. The sugarcane circle wasn't just a fort. It was a reminder that small resistance, even with the simplest tools, creates transformation, and the influence ripples outward. So ask yourself, what would it take to clear a space for something new within your world, your workplace, your relationships, or within yourself?
That's an important question. That's a very important question you're leaving with us. And hearing a question I wanted to ask, hearing from the two questions and comments that were there, a lot of folks, it seems, are either in corporate America or in places where utilizing niceness and niceness is kind of standard practice. But you mentioned in the book, our relationship with nice has conditioned us into submission, involuntarily aligning ourselves with systems that diminish individual and collective agency. You say, in fact, many behaviors that keep us stuck in a cycle of submission often go unnoticed. Recognizing them is the first step toward breaking free and creating change. What I heard in Ashley's question what I see there in terms of the excerpt you just read, and the privilege the young woman has not having to be there, I think we are looking to use this tool, to use this book as a compass, as you mentioned. It is not a map, it is a compass to offer us direction, to break free on creating the change that we want to see.
Yeah.
How do we utilize that? And I'll put this other context in, is that this is something I'm asking this personally, hopefully. Some free counseling. Career coach. Part of the work we are doing, like, there's a whole new swath of talent coming in. The Gen
Yeah.
Z, technically I'm a millennial, or older millennial, but I'm still a millennial. Yes, but we're in that. They call it. But I say that to say is that geriatric millennial.
Yes.
Yeah. But they say that is that.
It
That's.
is.
I hate when I hear that. But the point I'm making is that there are teen something, 20 somethings, even early 30 somethings, that are now coming into the workplace, that are now coming into society, growing,
Right.
building families, building careers, that we either are leading, we're working with,
Yep.
have an understanding, but their mindset around niceness, around, I think there's both, you know what I'm going to say, and push against systems that, sacred cows that didn't exist,
Yeah.
but then also maybe not having the thick skin, or having the disposition to be able to take direct critique. So it almost sometimes you're navigating these things, and a lot of that to me falls under that umbrella of nice. How do we use this book, or what are some points that you would want to point out to like I said, recognizing we need to recognize our relationship with nice,
Right.
but we want to break free in order to create change. I'm pretty sure most people are here to support, but please, by a show of hands, if you are trying to create change in one way or the other, I mean, that's the room.
Yeah.
How do we use this as you mentioned? This is a compass. Give us some tools on how to use this.
Yeah.
It's a great question to end on.
It is.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Thank you. I
one
like what you did there.
Yeah.
Yes.
We love it.
No,
Yes. Good job. Good job. One, read more books. And I really mean that. Like, the numbers we look at every year, people are not reading. It's so bad. It's so bad. There's so much goodness in books. There's so much truth in books. Please read a book. Not just this book. At the end, I do have a suggested list of books that inspire me and that inspired so much of this. Please read some books. That's the first thing. Do it in community. Right? There's so much in this book that you'll see, especially you get to know me a lot in this book. I think it's somewhat part memoir in a way. And so much of it is because of how I grew up as a missionary kid in community, where it was always about reciprocity and mutuality. And it was very stark coming back to the mainland in the middle of high school. That was traumatic. And we came back to California. And the way we do community here is very different than what I knew. It was very innate where I grew up. Literally everything was community, from the food you ate and grew to who taught it was just different. And it was small, which changes things, right? So do the work of practicing nerve in community, wherever you find that. If it's your faith group, if it's a group of activists, if it is even in the workplace, a small group, I think do it in community and be in conversation with people, because again, so much of the work that I do every single day, and I have TikTok now. That's new. I only started it in March. Thank you. And the people really like me. I should have done this years ago. But I have a TikTok series where I talk a lot about the work I do every day of the mindset shifts, right? It's behavioral communications that I practice about how to change your mindset, how to adopt a new idea and expand your mind. And I just think too many people don't understand that their neural connections and their neuroscience of the ideas we are socialized with, from the fealty we are asked to pledge in school every day, like the Pledge of Allegiance, like that is a form of social control. That is manufactured consent.
It's a form of trauma.
Right.
The holding,
Thank
the
you.
things we're pledging allegiance
Yes.
to. Jeez.
And in the book, you'll find there's one of the first chapters is some of the history of those things. Even I talk about ad campaigns and how it socialized us and shaped our mindset, from the 1950s ads of, have you spanked your wife today? That's weird. But these are the things that subliminally, even if you don't know. For example, by show of hands, how many of you would say breakfast is the most important meal of the day? You don't eat it. I know you don't. Don't you lie. Someone eats breakfast. That is a lie. It is the result of someone like me and Ashley and Lisa. It is a 100-year-old public relations campaign. A public relations practitioner surveyed a doctor in New York and said, hey, because at those times we were working 16-hour days, and said, if people ate more bacon and eggs, would they be able to last longer? And he said, sure, that sounds good. And he said, if I send a survey out to 4,000 other doctors, can I put your name on it? He said, sure. So we did, and he asked those other doctors, and they said, sure. And this PR practitioner was hired by the Beach Nut Packing Company, a banking company. And so this idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is not rooted in anything. There's no evidence of that. In fact, that's why so many people are doing the intermittent eating and the 6 small meals. There's a lot of conversation, and we're not here to debate that. But this idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is not actually rooted in anything science-backed, medical. It was just an idea that someone planted and we have adopted. And how often have you moved through the world accepting that idea, not knowing where it came from? Don't mess with Texas. Who has heard that phrase? Do you know where it's from? From Texas. It was at the time, Texas was spending over $20 million on litter, picking up litter. And so they went to a public relations professional, communications professional, and said, how do we get people to stop littering? And they did some testing, and they found out that, you know what? Our best audience here is going to be young men 15 to 24, because they take great pride in their state. And so they came up with the Don't Mess with Texas campaign to stop littering in the state of Texas. Right? So there are other examples of that. There are these ideas that we hold, these phrases that we know, but we don't necessarily know their origins and where they're from. And it's so much of what I unpack in the mindset sections of this book of ask those bigger critical questions, right? If you have the compass of how to ask a question, how to critically think, you may not fall prey to the traps of those ideas and those behaviors that may not actually serve you. Why are you eating bacon and eggs? You're raising your cholesterol. Like, what is that doing for you? But we do it. It was fed to us. And that is about mindset. It is about the ideas that we adopt. And in communications, early on, you learn that what people will do at any given moment in time is determined by how they see and experience the world. How we see and experience the world is determined by the stories we are told or not. And you will see there's a lot of communications and language tools in here to help us think critically, to think deeper, and to ask different questions about what we were handed. And that's part of why I wrote this book. Is there was, when my daughter was born, it was just for whatever, I think that happens when you're responsible for a little human, of just all these things that I believe, is it because they were handed to me or because I chose them? Did I pick them up? And a lot of it was simply handed to me. And I didn't ask a lot of questions until I realized, what do I hand to this little human? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot I don't want to hand her. And there's a lot I should have thrown out a long time ago. And so that's what I want people to think and to know. Use this to shift your mindset, to think about the stories that you believe that you were handed and which ones are you choosing to pick up such that it impacts how you move through the world and the actions that you take, because it has an impact on the people that you may never know, you may never see, that come long after you.
Thank you. People can buy the book?
They can, and I will sign it. I have
And
a
she's
special pen.
Signing books.
Purchase a book.
There's PayPal or Venmo. It's $22.95, and we will give you the Wi-Fi. It's Marguerite, The Marguerite, and then the password is the Pearl, capital T, capital P.
It's a quick study, I'm telling you.
And again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. I'm going to go back here to sign your books, and truly, thank you for the gift of your time and attention and being here. I'm so grateful.
Well, before you